What the heck is a DINK or a DINKWAD? A DINK is an acronym for dual income, no kids, and a DINKWAD is dual income, no kids, with a dog. I posted a YouTube short about being a DINKWAD and about how I love it and how it really is about me spending in alignment with my values. And of course, people love to be like, cringe, main character syndrome, blah. But I really think it's worth talking about why it ruffles so many feathers. I also think it's worth talking about the finances of people who choose to not have children, whether they are single or partnered, and what we need to be thinking about instead of shaming everyone for making life choices that might be different than the status quo. If you're new here, my name is Lindsay. I'm a certified financial therapist, licensed social worker, and I talk about the intersection of money and mental health. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the intersection of money, mental health, and what life looks like financially when you don't have kids. Before we get into the finances of it, I want to talk about some of my personal theories or anecdotes about why I think when I talk about my choice to not have children, why it ruffles so many feathers. I think a reason that it ruffles so many feathers, particularly in the United States, is because the lifestyle that I have as a person who is dual income, no kids with a dog is kind of the lifestyle that we were promised in this pseudo-American dream. This idea that if you work and you have a job, then you will be able to have a lifestyle that supports you owning a home, being able to take vacations, and retiring before the age of 80. I think when people see me living my life that allows me to do some of those things that are supposedly a part of this American dream, people get resentful and people get upset. And I don't blame them because they're saying, the only way to have this so-called American dream is by opting out of a big part of it. The white picket fence with 2.5 kids, seeing me live my life in this way is a trigger for a lot of people, which I kind of get, right? This is a person who has made a conscientious decision about their reproductive rights and what they do and don't want. And it also shows people just how messed up the system is, that it literally takes 2 full-time incomes without a child in order to support this lifestyle that we've all been sold in the United States. I think it's really hard when somebody holds up a mirror and says, hey, the system is broken. If you want to live this lifestyle, you actually have to opt out of a large part of it. The reality is the cost of childcare in the US continues to go up. Support for families and working families in particular is way down. It doesn't make sense for a lot of people who are in 2-parent households to have both of them working in most instances because the cost of childcare, daycare, and support usually eats up the entirety of one salary, so you may as well have one person stay home. Another reason I think that my lifestyle ruffles so many feathers is that it pushes back against the norms or the supposed tos. Anytime you have a person who is living outside of the bounds of what we deem to be appropriate timelines, which don't exist, people get cranky because you are saying, hey, that's cool that works for you, but it's not something for me. It really kind of pushes a nerve when people see somebody opt out of the lifestyle that we are sold. Another thing that I think comes up is that I'm a millennial, which means that I was raised within this weird, late 80s, 90s feminism that was all about women leaning in and doing more and juggling as many responsibilities as possible. And a part of this having it all myth that was sold to us in the 90s was having a full-time job, girl bossing, wearing the sharp blazer, and keeping house, whatever the fuck that means, and having children. All of these things we needed to do in order to be good feminists. And I think it's hard for people who are raised with that message to see somebody say hey, I'm a feminist and this is the way that I choose to practice feminism. Another thing is that being an American, I'd pretty much always seen studies and surveys that showed that people who have children tend to be less happy. When I was recently in Copenhagen, I visited the Happiness Museum. And if you want to know how I got to Copenhagen for pennies on the dollar, you can watch my video all about travel hacking and I break it down there. But I wanted to go to the Happiness Museum because I'm a fan of Mike Viking and his work. And essentially what he and his colleagues did was create an interactive museum that shows museum goers the different things that impact our happiness. And as an American, I'd pretty much only seen surveys and studies from Pew, etc., about just how terrible having children is on our happiness. But what's really interesting is that not all countries are created equal. In countries that have generous family policies, particularly paid time off and childcare support, they actually find that having kids can make you happier. This study done by Jennifer Glass and her colleagues found that happiness in children varies wildly in developed countries depending on the types of social supports that are available to you. But in the United States, you can see here that there is this drastic decrease in our happiness because, surprise, in the US, we have basically no social safety net for parents, in particular working parents. And of course, it's going to be associated with being far more stressful. We have been sold this idea of rugged individualism and doing it yourself. And so not only do we not lean on our communities and our peers and our family and our friends for support, but we certainly get no support from our government that is supposed to be supposedly taking care of us. So I had always been told that kids make you less happy, but it turns out that's not always the case. Honestly, happiness really didn't have much to do with my choice of why I didn't want to have kids. I always knew that it wasn't in the cards for me. It just never felt like something I wanted to do. So many people have said highly inappropriate things about me not wanting kids. Things like, who's going to take care of you when you're older? And, oh, you won't really know happiness until you have children. Or, don't you think your parents are going to be disappointed in you if you don't give them grandchildren? Like, what in the monarchy are we living? Like, I do not think that highly of myself that I need to pass on my genetic material to heirs. Like, what? Anyway, let's take a very non-child related example. I have a dog. As you probably know by the title, I love my dog. She's a total pain in the ass, tends to be incredibly annoying to anybody who isn't me or my partner, and I freaking love her. There truly are not things that I don't think I would do for this dog. Spoil her rotten, take her to training, have the best on-call vet care that you can imagine. I really take care of that dog and I love her immensely. And I would not say to a friend, a neighbor, a sibling, hey, you need to have a dog because you truly don't know happiness if you didn't have a dog. And with all of the dogs that need adopting, it would be ridiculous to give somebody who knows they don't like dogs, knows they kind of gross them out, they're dirty, they're smelly, they don't like the hair, they also just in general don't like a critter crawling on them. It would be ridiculous to say to them, just get one. You'll see when you have your own dog how different it is for you. The amount of dogs that would end up in homes and then be incredibly neglected is ridiculous. The idea that somebody would say to a person who chooses to not have children, just have a kid and see, that is an incredibly ignorant and irresponsible thing to say. Bringing a child into the world, if you're not really sure if you want one, and then fingers crossed, hope it makes you happy and you love them, is a horrific thing to say to people. Let's not just experiment with bringing other humans into the world and seeing if it makes you feel good or feel love or feel happy. People used to say to me oh, I think you're going to regret not having kids. Let me tell you, I would much rather regret not having brought a child into the world than bring a child into the world and regret having it. No, thank you. I don't want to bring a child into this world and have them feel resented or annoyed or like they were a mistake. Hard pass. Parents also love to confide in me just how freaking hard parenthood is because they feel like they can't tell it to their friends who are parents. There's so much stigma around being a good parent and being happy and how it's the only thing that will complete you in life. So now that we've talked about my hypotheses on why people get so riled up when I say I'm not having kids, let's talk about the finances of it all. So if you are child-free by choice, there are some financial things you need to make sure that you do because so much financial planning advice is tailored towards people who have children and omits the people who don't have children. The most recent data on the cost of children is that in the United States, the average cost of raising a child between the ages of 0 and 18 is $310,000. Now, because I did not have kids and I am not having kids, that does not mean Uncle Sam's Lindsay, here's $310,000, go enjoy your life. It just means that isn't a type of expense that I will have. People without children don't have access to things like earned income tax credits or the ability to claim additional dependents on their tax credits. Now, to be clear, I don't think not having access to those things is a bad thing for me. I think that the government should give people who have children in the US far more tax credits, far more support. But as a person who doesn't have kids, I don't get to say like I have X number of dependents or I get that earned income tax credit. So you need to have a will and a trust. So many people assume that having a will and a trust is only for people who have dependents, but you also need to tell people what to do with your estate when you are gone. Where should your money go? You don't want it tied up in probate. How do you want your money to be dispersed? Do you want it to go to family, nieces, nephews, to a foundation or a charity? If you have a cat or a dog and you pass away, who is going to take care of that cat or dog? And do you want money to be set aside to help care for that cat or dog? I do have my dog in my will. It may sound bananas, but I know that so many people in my family don't want dogs, and I'm not going to say you need to take care of my dog. And I certainly don't want my dog being surrendered to the Humane Society. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's not what I want for my sweet little doggy. So instead, I have carved out an amount of money that if my partner and I die, there is a set amount of money that will go along with caring for the dog. And we've already talked to a person in our life who said, yes, they will take care of the dog and we will give them the financial support to do so. You also need to make sure that if you are child free, that you have somebody available to you that can act as your power of attorney for both financial and healthcare related things. If you end up in the hospital and are temporarily disabled, you need to have somebody that healthcare providers can go to and say, hey, what does this person want done in this type of situation? You don't want to leave your healthcare up to a random person's choice. Typically, it will go to the next of kin, but you may be estranged from your parents. You may not have a sibling that can be considered next of kin. So we want to make sure that you have somebody available who can help to execute the type of things that you do or don't want done with your healthcare needs in the event that something happens to you. So you need a durable power of attorney. Similarly, for your finances, if you end up in a situation where you are not mentally or emotionally capable of doing things like paying your bills, of taking care of your finances, you need to have somebody available who can kind of step in, who has access to your passwords, your bills, things like that, and can make sure that your finances are handled. So that's called a durable power of attorney. If you are partnered, oftentimes you want to make sure that your partner's kind of listed first, but you also want to have a couple of backup people in the event that your partner is not able to serve that need. And you also want to be thinking about long-term care. In the United States, we don't have good care for our elders, so oftentimes adult children end up being the default caregivers. Now, plenty of adult children don't want to take care of their parents and will do things like put them in a home, and that's kind of it. This idea that adult children are just going to swoop in and take care of their aging parents is a little silly. I have heard many horror stories about people who age and think that their adult children will take care of them, and for a variety of reasons, they opt not to. So you need to make sure that you have a long-term care plan in place. Oftentimes that means you need to be assertively and aggressively investing in your retirement, because making sure that those coffers are full and can help to take care of you in your aging years is going to be incredibly important. You need to figure out how much it will cost. Long-term care is incredibly expensive, particularly if you want to age in place and have a nurse come in and check on you every once in a while. You're going to need to pay a lot out of pocket. So if that is the way that you want to age in place, make sure that you have the funds in place to do that. Alongside that, you're going to want to make sure you have some form of disability insurance. Life insurance is great. We'll get into that in a second, but more often than not, people leave the workforce early because of some sort of disability. So making sure that you have disability insurance in place to help support that income in the event that you get pushed out of the workforce sooner than you were planning on it, you want to have some disability insurance, which leads me into life insurance. Yes, you actually do want life insurance. In most instances, a term policy is what you need. It's relatively affordable, and what it does is that in the event of your death, it will pay out a lump sum to your estate, which then again goes back to like making sure you have a will and trust in place. Funerals are incredibly expensive, and you don't want to leave bereaved family and chosen family to have to dip into their own pockets to care for those things. So having a life insurance policy in place can help pay for funeral needs. Sounds so macabre, but like these are things we need to be talking about. So you need an estate plan, which means you need a will and a trust. You need to have a durable power of attorney for your healthcare and for your finances. You need to make sure you have a long-term care plan in place and disability insurance. And kind of sprinkled throughout that is the importance of investing in your retirement, making sure that if you are traditionally employed and your employer offers you some sort of 401k or 403b, you are contributing as much as possible to that, and that the money in there is invested. Notice I didn't say saving for retirement, I said investing for retirement. Other options, if you are traditionally employed but your employer doesn't provide a retirement plan, are things like an IRA or a Roth IRA. And if you are self-employed, there are many different options, such as a solo 401k or a SEP. There are many different ways that you can be investing for retirement, and you need to be investing because if you keep all of your money in a savings account, inflation is just going to eat away at it over time. If you are looking for guidance on investing, I took Amanda Holden's Invested Development course last year and a half ago. Doesn't matter. At any rate, it was fantastic. Highly recommend it if you are looking for education and information on how to invest to make sure that you're taking care of your future self. I will link that in the description. A couple of resources. Michael Kitces has a really great article all about disability and long-term care insurance. There are also financial planners who specifically help people who are child-free and have their finger on the pulse of the needs of people who are child-free. And I will link a resource for a financial planner who specializes in that. Those are some of my thoughts on the finances of being child-free. If you are child-free by choice and you're a DINK or a DINKWAD, let me know. You are not alone. We are a growing movement, and we also deserve to be taken care of financially. All right, see you in the next video.